let's just be real about the conversation. You have two parents, a woman and a man, right? Who do decently well for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you leave that dad in charge of choosing a mate for his daughter. I personally believe my dad would be a whole lot stricter with my mates than I would be, right? So I think that that's even the what he's saying is even more so if your parents are involved, because your parents are going to always want the best for you. You may settle for something like, but I love him, and your dad is like, absolutely not.
Well, that's what the wealthy does. That's kind of some of the stuff. So when we're talking about even values and stuff like that, like Blaxicon was saying, your social class don't determine your values. I beg to differ. It has a big influence. I'm not saying that it's universal. There are some values that I don't think has to do with class, like things like honesty or kindness, things like that. I don't think that that necessarily have to do with class within itself. I just think that that's more like human decency you should have. But like for instance, you're talking about marriage. The real wealthy, they don't particularly allow their kids to just free date and do willy-nilly. Like they plan their lives out for them. They already know you're going to be marrying somebody from this family or a wealthy family, like people that's within their class circle, right?
So, so I
And
think I agree, and I don't want, because I think that when we talk about things that we feel are unreachable, I think that we lose people. So even when we talk about, let's stick it, when you can make that point even with average class, right, or with middle class, right? Because I'm gonna tell you, if you have a mother and a father, let's just say your dad's a doctor and your mom's a teacher, right? I trust me, at some point in that conversation, who is this guy? What do his parents do? What kind of family does he come from? Those are questions even I had in my family, right? And I don't know if that's a class thing or if it's I don't know what it is, but I do know that my parents, I remember that. Those are questions that your parents, both your mom and your dad, they ask you, right? Am
but
I
the
wrong?
influence or the level of influence
No, that's
is
not
the
what.
level of
So
influence is
I'm
very
sorry.
different though, is what I'm saying. The fact that they asked you and things like that, the vetting of what you're saying. What I'm talking about is in that super duper, like that upper class, that does not happen. It's
Right,
not
but
a matter of who are you dating? Oh, let me, it's
yeah, but we want to be, so most of us are not in that class. So it really doesn't, what I was trying to say is we know that they orchestrate, I mean, you can look at the royal family. You can't just be anybody dating, they keep it a buck. But
right.
what I'm saying to you is, even in, like, let's just say in the classes that we are in, right? Even in the middle class, I would say my parents were probably in the middle class, right? These were questions. If I let my parents make the decision on my love life, they were stricter than I was. You understand? Because I know AP was saying parents, that's why you need a two-parent household.
So I've never asked those questions. What happens at my house is my daughter will say, "This boy likes me. Uh, when do you want to meet him to see if he's okay? When I meet him, then I'm going to meet the parents, and then I sign off. It
But you're
goes
doing
in.
the same thing. You're just doing it in a different kind of way, right?
Yeah, like so. I do give her the flexibility to make some decisions, right? Because I'm not ultra wealthy, and I'm not going to say you're going to go marry one of the Koch kids. I don't have that ability. I'm not there yet. But on the scale that I can, because I am involved, and because I've set this with her at 16, there's never been a boyfriend that wasn't approved. She's only had two, And this one, I approve of the family, and we'll see. Like I understand because I'm not delusional enough to believe that at 19 you're gonna run off and get married, like that's and things don't change. But at the same time, it's been consistent with her because of my messaging. Period.
And
And I'm
that's
not saying it would be different if I wasn't around. I'm not saying that, but I know that there was the rules that I set and she's abide by, right? So I just think that when we can get to a place, and I'm not wealthy, I'm not broke, but I ain't balling on a limitless income either. You know what I'm saying? So I would see that as more middle class.
Well, let me ask you a question. Were you the class that you're in now? Were you in that class growing up?
Nope. Oh God, no.
Okay,
The projects that
right.
y'all were talking about that Bo mentioned earlier, I lived in them.
Well, let me ask you this question. Would you say are the values that you had at that in that class are the same values that you have now, or have your values changed?
I've understood them better. They've I'd say they haven't changed. I'd say I understand why now. Like why I've always thought a certain way.
I would say so. So we both know that there are exceptions to rules, right? Because
Mhm.
I would say that I know people who live in the projects who think totally different way. They're not they live in the project. They're not of the projects, right? And there's
I
a
love
reflection of
projects,
that.
man.
I've seen students who grew up in poverty, the smartest, the brightest kids in the room. They go off. They end up being very very successful. So we do know that those kids exist. So let you know.
But are they the
Yeah,
majority?
no. The-
No, they're not.
I was in the projects and of the projects. I'm gonna keep it a stat.
No, I wasn't.
I was bad in the
We
motherfucker.
were
You ain't
I
no
was
point in me
in
lying.
the projects, but I definitely wasn't of the projects. But like you, I didn't know until I got older to understand the difference. Like just the
Right.
I mean, I had both of my parents, I grew up with married parents. Both of my parents we were the only ones in our entire apartment that did not were not on some kind of social service, stuff like that. But that goes to show too that just because you move, what they say, you could take the person out of the hood, you can't take the hood out of the person. Like with my dad, we shouldn't have even grown up in the projects per se, but my dad grew up poor, and that's how we ended up in the projects, because that's what he was accustomed to, even though financially we didn't have to be there, right? um so, but I can definitely say that even though I was in the projects, I wasn't of the projects, but I was definitely influenced by my environment, right? And what I can look at now, like versus back then, is that my values have definitely changed once my environment changed. And I think
See,
that, that's a huge difference, because the people I was watching somebody and it said your environment is basically the number one predictor of success for like
mm,
your children's outcome, because it has the biggest influence. At a certain age, you no longer influence your kids. What influence their kids are their friends, the environment that they're in, right? And I can see that the difference between the environment that I was in and what I valued when I was in that environment versus transitioning into a different environment where that the values of that environment were very different. So I adapted and changed. And so therefore some of my values changed as well.